Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Reclaiming Fertility Joy, Healing the Broken Spirit of Polycystic Ovarian Syndrome. I am your host, Corey Ray Kovacs, registered nurse and women's wellness mentor and educator. And joining me today is a fantastic, wonderful person that I have gotten to know over the last few weeks. This is Dr. Stacy Barczak Baker. She is a traditional naturopath who specializes in functional medicine. After suffering from chronic illness for most of her own life, she finally found relief in using a holistic approach to regain her health and correct her imbalances. Discovering functional medicine has been a life-changing event for her, and she has set forth to help as many people as possible regain their health, and with that, their quality of life. Dr. Stacy has been in the health and wellness sphere for close to 15 years, and she holds several functional medicine certifications, a master's in holistic nutrition, and is constantly finding new ways to learn and grow more so she can continue to support not only her own health, but the health of her patients in her practice, Vibe Wellness. Well, welcome to the show, Dr. Stacy. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
It has been such an amazing week of hearing all of these amazing experts, and I have very much been looking forward to talking with you about your mission to support women and supporting their whole health through their wellness journeys and specifically through their fertility journey. So I would love for you to share a little bit more about why you do what you do and how you're kind of making waves and changes here in the functional medicine world.
Thank you so much. So, the express version of my own story is my primary motivator, because it's been such a long journey for me personally. And my goal is to make it as short as I can for anyone who comes to me based on everything I've had to learn the hard way.
Right.
So I know a lot of us practitioners have that same story. I personally did not deal with infertility. However, it wasn't until I had my children that I really woke up to lots of things with conventional medicine, the food industry, toxin load, all of those things. And so for me to be really in this place where what are you putting into your child makes you question literally everything. So I'm so blessed that I was able to do that. However, wish I would have learned way before I had kids about all of these things. So my goal is to help women preconception wise learn what I wish I would have known as well.
That is really important. And I know that has been a frequent topic of conversation, is this preconception point. It's not common knowledge. It's not things that we grow up learning from our parents or from common conversations, because a lot of this stuff is still really taboo. But, even just the fact that our eggs and the quality of our eggs, we're talking 3 to 4 months before that conception. So those things that happened back then will have effects when you do get pregnant. And so having this mindset of let's build our health in the best point that we can, 3 to 6 months or more before we plan on having, getting pregnant, to create not only the best health for us while we're getting pregnant, during pregnancy, but afterwards, and then the health of our children, because that matters.
Absolutely. Yeah. And mom's health determines baby's immune system. And so, that's something we're not really taught regularly.
No.
So if your gut is out of balance, baby's gut will also be out of balance. And that's where we get these genetic issues, but really it's just a transfer of our own imbalances to our children.
This is one of the most fascinating things that I learned, basically had to go to nursing school to figure this out, but just the mother's microbiome and how that is passed to the child. And that literally is laying the foundation for their own microbiome and how they, their immune system, how their digestive system works and all of that for their entire lifetime. That is setting them up that is something that oh my gosh, I got goosebumps thinking about that,
I
because that is
know.
something so important that nobody talks
So
about.
important. Right. Yeah. No, no one talks about it, but here we are.
But
So
here we are, and now we're talking
yeah.
about it, and that's what's
Yes.
important. We are talking about this
Yes.
now. So, let's talk. Let's talk a little bit about our nervous systems and how they affect and how they play a role in, especially women with PCOS or struggling with fertility issues. Um, because I think sometimes we think automatically PCOS means a reproductive issue, that it's a fertility issue. I think we don't really come to this like place where we say, oh, this is actually a whole system issue. It's an
Mm-hmm.
endocrine issue. It's a nervous system issue. It's a metabolic. I mean, it's all of these things. It's a gut issue. It's all of these
Right.
systems. So let's specifically talk about the nervous system and how that plays a role in our fertility with PCOS.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I always tell people when you single out a hormone, you're not going to get the full answer, right? You have to
Yes.
really zoom out and look at what signals that hormone to be released, and that is your hypothalamus. So
Mm-hmm.
if your sleep is terrible, if you are regularly exposed to blue light and endocrine disruptors, and your nervous system cannot regulate, then your hormones also cannot regulate. So it's extremely important with any sort of hormonal imbalance to release the signal. That is what's happening in the brain, essentially.
Yeah, this is not I mean, not to get too much into like an anatomy class or anything, but what's happening with these hormones that are released from our ovaries and the other, our adrenals and things like that is it's our brains, our, that HPO
Mm-hmm.
axis, the hypothalamus pituitary ovary axis, that all of these
Mm-hmm.
hormones, because really what hormones are, they're messengers. They communicate from one part of the body to another. And when you just look, okay, well, you're having, excess androgens, or you're having, excess LH, or, adrenals, or, you're having these excess of hormones. Well, you do kind of have to take a step back and say, okay, where is the challenge? And oftentimes it starts up here. So
Mm-hmm.
how does that nervous system regulation or deregulate, dysregulation, how is that like affecting our ability for these hormones to communicate?
Well, a lot of us are stuck as far as nervous system regulation goes. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of us are stuck in chronic fight or flight, which means
Yeah.
that our signaling is going more towards our adrenals to
Mm-hmm.
really stress hormones and kind of keep up with the amount of stress, whether it's internal or external
Right.
factors that are causing it. And so when that happens, you're priming your body to release these stress hormones, and then sex hormones are going to kind of take the back seat, right? You're not going
Right.
to reproduce when you're getting chased by a tiger, and that's
Right.
the way I always tell people.
Right. I mean,
So we have to, yeah.
it's when you are in this, and we don't realize how much it's everything, all these things that you were just mentioning, the blue light, the constant notifications on our phone, the
Mm-hmm.
the stresses at work, and then you add in the stresses of fertility, and the stress we're putting on our body with the food that we eat, or how the lack of movement or too much movement, or all of these things play a
Mm-hmm.
role. And our bodies literally were not made for all this stimulation. And so we are in
No.
that. Yeah, reproduction is way on the lower list of priorities in our body. So how can we kind of regulate our nervous systems a little bit better? How can we bring some kind of calming and bringing our systems? Obviously, we're not going to be able to get rid of everything because we live the lives that we do, but what can we do on a daily basis that would help and have the most impact on regulating our nervous system?
Yeah, and this is one of my favorite things, because I always tell my clients, sometimes you can't change the stressors in your
Yeah.
environment or your life, right? But you have to change how you respond to them, or how your
Mm.
nervous system is responding to them. So what that looks like is, it's finding ways to connect, with
Mm,
nature, connect with
yes.
community, even sound therapy, practicing mindfulness, doing more of what brings you joy. That's going to really release those happy feel endorphins
Right.
and get it to that parasympathetic state. So it truly is slowing down and learning how to be still, how to make your
Mhm.
mind still, and create a new baseline for your nervous system, because right now our baselines are jacked up on cortisol. So
Yeah.
we have to do better if we want to get to a restorative place.
This is really important to note too, that this takes time. This isn't,
Yes.
yeah, it's not going to happen overnight. These Your nervous system maybe has been operating at this level for months
Mm-hmm.
or years,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe even go back to like childhood. If you've had, we've all got the trauma and things and experiences that we've had even back then. So we could have
Mm-hmm.
had been operating at this level even before monarchy, before before we even got to
Yeah.
that point. So be consistent with those things. Find the things that you enjoy, right?
Mm-hmm.
I did a post about working out, and it was me doing a Just Dance thing, because it's one of those things that I love, right? It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
I got things flying everywhere, and it's totally fine. But the thing but the thing is, for me, is like there's a mental health component to that, because I
Yeah.
enjoy it, moving my
Just
body,
fun.
obviously. It's just
Yeah.
fun. So
Mm-hmm.
finding these things that bring you joy. If you don't like meditation, if meditation makes you feel more nervous than calm, then find something else. Maybe walking, or
Yep.
connecting with nature, or having a cup of coffee with a friend. You know, the connection.
Mm-hmm.
You said that, and
Totally.
so I was like, what I heard was like, connection is the cure. Like, it's like connection
Yes.
brings you back to yourself, and brings you back to present, brings you back to this place. So your system,
Yeah.
you know, biologically can start saying, hey, okay, I'm actually am safe. And I actually can,
Yes.
rest and digest, be in that parasympathetic place, and promote
Yes.
reproduction.
Yes, exactly. And with that, just adding on to that, that when you can finally be in the present moment, you're connecting with your breath and just your environment at that moment, then your mind is not going a million miles a minute into
Mhm.
the future
Yeah,
or thinking about the
in the back.
past and worrying
Mhm.
about that. You're just there. And that's truly where you can get to that place of peace so that you can restore.
Yeah, it's not, I mean, I know that there's so much kind of conversation. I love that so many people are talking about meditation and mindful movement and things like that. And sometimes people can be like, well, that's really woo-woo. Well, but it's
Yeah,
not. We know, I mean, it
right.
is. It can be. It can be
It
very
can
spiritually
be,
connected.
yeah, but
Absolutely. But
there's so much
it's
science behind it. Hmm.
yes, we are seeing that
Yeah.
the more that we spend these mindfulness presence moments with ourselves, that we are really affecting all these different layers of our emotional health, our mental health, our physical health, and our spiritual health. All of these things combined when we
Yep.
spend that time, that presence time, even if you just start out with just breathing, minding 10 mindful
Yeah.
breaths, is a
Yep.
starting place. And it's amazing when you start consistently doing that, how much that does make a difference.
Hmm.
I
Yep.
absolutely love that. And one of the things that you said, like, we can't control all of the stressors and the things. One of the things I find and one thing that we don't necessarily talk about a whole lot is boundaries. And
Hmm.
sometimes, right, you were talking about connection, and it's like, I feel like this is one of those connections with myself, and realizing that there are maybe things that are in my control, like my social calendar, or
Hmm.
other maybe relationships that aren't feeding my soul, or I mean, there's
Yeah.
lots of things that we know that we may be doing that is people pleasing, or that is allowing. So how, like, how what have you found, like, in terms of boundaries, or how that can help support as well? How do you see that kind of play a role too?
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, it's even more in our face, like not just with our personal community. that we are in person with, but also our online community, right?
Uh-huh.
There's an overload of information. We don't
Causing
know when to
inflammation.
stop. We're afraid. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. We
Information
just
causing
don't know
inflammation.
when. Yeah,
I love that.
it's just the age of mass confusion, and
Ugh,
that
yes.
really is another thing that disconnects us from our own intuition. For me personally, you know, I've shifted so many things, and it even like just think of all the chronic fatigue in the world.
Mhm.
Sometimes when someone is doing all the right things and still not getting there, I have to have that conversation with them. What is draining you? What in your
Mhm.
schedule, what in your life is draining you? Because it's all about healing is about a conservation of energy.
Yes.
And if you are unable to say, hey, this isn't fulfilling me, running my kids, every single day, never having home time at home, never having time to connect is not serving me anymore. You have to be able to realize that, tune in. And that's a lot easier if you're doing this mindfulness practice, because you will
Mhm.
know, you'll get that gut instinct back
Yep.
to know, hey, I need to make a shift. This is not working.
You will realize your space is precious, your space and your
Yes.
space here
Yeah.
too. And that's how, I mean, honestly, I was notorious at not having boundaries. I grew up in a family, I was like the oldest
Mm-hmm.
of nine. I shared a room with a sister,
Mm-hmm.
my sister, my whole life until I went join the military. No boundaries. I literally had
Yeah.
nothing. I did not grow up in a
Yeah.
house. I didn't know what boundaries looked like. And so I had to
Yeah.
learn what that was. And honestly, that was probably, if I had to toss it in there, one of the biggest things I could have done for my health was creating boundaries
Yeah.
around my menstrual cycle and resting when I
Mm-hmm.
was, in menstruation, and boundaries around my spiritual practice and around my
Mm-hmm.
eating habits and what my
Yep.
environment looked like in the house. So
Yes. And even
this,
as a parent and a spouse, you have to be able
yes,
to verbalize what you
yes.
need. My husband knows by the end of the week, I'm going to need, I homeschool my kids, I
Mhm.
work full time. I'm going to need some time on the weekends. And so just, making sure you're creating space to pour it, because pouring into yourself is pouring into everybody that you serve.
Yes.
So
You
that's, making sure you do that is so huge.
you cannot pour from an empty cup. This is like one of my hugest mantras. You cannot pour from an empty cup. I think we grew
Mm-hmm.
up, kind of us millennials and
Mm-hmm.
Gen Xers, we came into this place where we thought that we literally had to give everything of ourselves in order to be worthy of love, or to earn our place in the world. And that's just not, it's not serving us at all. So
No,
learning these
no.
communication, like you just said, learning that communication
Yeah.
and actually following through with it in a kind way, of course,
Yes.
in a supportive way, but
Yes.
following through with those
Yes.
boundaries and upholding those boundaries is one of the best things that you can do for regulating your stress. I
Totally.
love that.
Totally.
Love that. So,
Yeah.
what else? Okay. So what else about environmental factors? I know this is something you look at really, really closely with your patients that you
Mm-hmm.
work with, is these
Mm-hmm.
environmental factors, in addition to stress. So let's talk about those a little bit, and how they affect those of us with PCOS.
Yeah, totally. So I always look at toxin load in any incoming clients, because when someone's dealing, like I said, with that hormonal imbalance or imbalance of any sort, we have to look at what's affecting your nutrient status, what's affecting the brain signaling, what could be possibly mimicking your hormones in your body, like hormone disruptors, endocrine
Mhm.
disruptors will do. So I look at toxin load. So we look at phthalates, parabens, dioxins, pesticides, anything that could be causing inflammation in the body and really truly keeping us in that state of high cortisol that is going to downregulate our hormones or just bog down our liver so that we can't have normal rhythms with our hormone detoxification, because that's usually a huge factor too. And while these toxins are, unavoidable, we have to help our body with detoxification and drainage so that we can remove them properly, and also locate toxins in our environment and our food, air, water, home, at least bare minimum, so that we can bring that toxin load down so our body can do its thing. So it can be extremely disruptive to not only the nervous system, but literally every cell in your body. If you're messing with cell receptors, your cell
Mhm.
membranes, your nutrient status, just everything across the board. It's going to affect your mitochondria.
Right. So, okay, let's say you have somebody who's literally starting from scratch in terms of they're like, okay, I didn't realize my environment was causing some troubles and I want to start making some changes, right? Obviously, going and doing everything all at once. I mean, that's so overwhelming. So what
It's
would
so hard.
be, it's
Mhm.
so hard. And I mean, I'm in the
Yeah.
process, like literally, I'm like sitting here and I'm like, I had to grab a bottle of water today because I didn't freaking wash my water, my metal water bottle, and now it's
Yeah.
sitting in the
Hey,
car with lemon, right? So like, but I
it is
literally
what
was
it is.
thinking about that, like crap. Oh.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, okay, how
It's
can we tell
everywhere.
somebody that like maybe the top, 3 things or 5 things they could do today that would help
Mhm.
start them on the path of cleansing their environment from these toxins and helping support their bodies.
Water is by far the very most important thing. Our bodies are mostly water. Water is a carrier with nutrients and even a mover of toxins. We have to get water. That is what is our intracellular communication.
Mm-hmm.
So cleaning up your water supply, mineralizing you, and structuring your water has to be primary. I see so many toxicity reports from people who are really being poisoned from their water supply.
Mm-hmm.
And really, once they just cleaning up that alone with a really good filter, adding some trace minerals, structuring your water, even structuring your water, I could talk about that for hours, but even just getting the amount of sunlight you're supposed to get a day that's unfiltered, or getting exposure in an infrared sauna, and eating plants. Plants are structured water. So many ways that you can structure your water. And then also your food supply. If you are bombarded with things like glyphosate, that is a chelator. That means that it's going to steal your nutrients. So you cannot fix a nutrient deficiency if you are bombarded with glyphosate. So those are the top 2. And then from there, another tier would be looking at the products in your home, looking at the Skin Deep database, seeing if you have endocrine disruptors in your home and beauty products. That's kind of the order of events that I would recommend someone start.
Right. It's really important to kind of note that you could literally go through and you could take all these, the chemical known, endocrine disruptors out of your bathroom, out of your kitchen. But if you're not looking at your water and your food, then I mean, of course
Those
it
are
makes
our
it easy, but
biggest
those are the big
exposures.
ones.
Yeah.
Let's work at those first. So start from where you're
Yeah.
at. Always,
Yeah.
always start from where you are at now. And if you haven't done anything or know nothing about, how the environment could be affecting you, then this part right here, making these changes with your water, and even just switching from plastic bottles to a glass container. I mean, that's at least, a start. It's one thing, right? It's a
Yeah, for
start. It's
sure.
getting
Yes.
you in that right direction. So,
Yes, absolutely.
well, that's fantastic. That is absolutely fantastic to think about. Now, one thing I know that we are challenged with is making change in our life, and especially if we start to have our awareness, and there's nothing like getting thrown into the world of infertility to make you aware of your health. Because for many of our patients, this is where they have the big thing that happens to their health. They're young, they're in their 20s or early 30s, and suddenly like they're like, oh crap, I have this condition that is a lifelong condition, and this has all these effects, and it's affecting my ability. So how can we, if we've not had our health on our mind, how can we start making these changes? What's the mindset, and how can we help support ourselves and our health a little bit better when making these changes?
It is hard because it feels like to be healthy in today, or it just in the US in general, you truly are going against the grain. But that is a badge I will proudly wear because I see what the other side brings
Yeah.
me. I truly would have been bedridden had I just not found natural medicine. I would have just been a lost cause.
Yeah.
So it's one of these things when we start to have these conditions that we're labeled with in our 20s and 30s, it is a wake-up call. It's a
Hmm.
wake-up call that we are not vibing with the environment that we are in. And
Yeah.
so it's also super empowering because a
Yeah,
lot of these things can be reversed.
exactly.
So it really is truly about just making your health and making your lifestyle and your, pouring into yourself a priority. And,
Hmm.
and it really, it sometimes is stepping away from a community that may not be serving you, that is, prioritizing everything against what you're trying to achieve. And so maybe finding new people who are also going to support
Hmm.
that journey, because the minute you want to change something, you're going to get the people who want you to stay the same,
Yeah.
that are, are just kind of like, they're comfortable, and maybe they're uncomfortable with change and they want to keep you right there with them. So it truly has to be self-driven.
Yeah.
You can't really ask other people's opinions like, should I make these changes? You have to really feel it and resonate with it
Right.
personally, because everybody's going to tell you something different.
They are. There is so much information out there. And certainly when this is kind of the difference between talking to somebody's expert advice and somebody's personal opinion, and often we talk to our friends and our family because they're our support system.
Mm-hmm.
But generally speaking, if we're not living, if we're living in an environment that is not supporting our health, then it's likely we've been living like that for a long time, meaning that that's the
Yeah.
house we grew up with, that's the family. And of course, the social aspects and the cultural aspects of where you come from is very important. But this is where
Yes.
boundaries, right, starts to come
Mm-hmm.
into play, and how that's important,
Yeah.
because if you really do want to make these changes for your health, you might have to set some boundaries. You might have to, make some changes and communicate, because you'll find, at least bringing that up gives people an opportunity to support you rather than you having to go
Mm-hmm.
through this by yourself. And so, yeah, this is like understanding that there are going to be challenges. There are going to be
Mm-hmm.
challenges, but this is the best way you can really love yourself and support yourself, is making these changes, because that's what PCOS does. It's about your environment. Yeah, you can't change your genetic, we didn't quite figure that part out yet, but you
Yeah.
can affect your environment and how your body interacts with the environment. And so supporting yourself and really being an advocate for yourself is really vital in where you're at, not only for your health, your fertility, but for your health now and your health to come. So um,
Absolutely. Yep.
this has been absolutely such a magical conversation. I absolutely love this. I would love to talk a little bit about your freebie and what you're offering to those that are attending here at the summit. I'd love to talk about and talk a little bit about Vibe Wellness.
Yeah, absolutely. So Vibe Wellness is my virtual practice. It's me. I have a health coach, I have a nutritionist, and I also have an EFT specialist. So that's a tapping,
Tapping.
emotional
Mhm.
freeing technique. Mhm.
Wonderful.
So we're slowly growing. I do all the new lab intakes, and so I know that the labs can be expensive. They're not covered by insurance. So for me, for anyone attending the summit, I am offering 10% off on any lab testing. If you want to look at toxin load, look at your endocrine disruptors, run a Dutch test, look at your, not just your hormones, but your cortisol throughout the day.
Hmm.
And also, how are your hormones detoxifying? So giving some indication on liver detoxification.
Hmm.
So all of those things. But yeah, just to kind of, extend the offer out there just so that, it can help a little bit. Cause like I said, I know that the labs can be expensive, but the information you're going to get and the starting point you're going to get from them is completely invaluable.
It's so important. I cannot iterate enough the importance of labs and how those can
Mm-hmm.
play a part in really figuring out what is really going on at the base. What is this root
Mm-hmm.
part that is affecting us, because PCOS has so many different factors that play, and different where one person insulin may be the biggest thing, another person it might
Mm-hmm.
be the adrenals, or it might be the inflammatory, or it might be the thyroid, or it might be a combination of these things. So really the labs are going to sift all that information out. So that way you're not just throwing spaghetti on the wall and trying to figure out how to take care of yourself. You really have
Totally.
the information. So that is such a blessing. Thank you so much for offering that to everybody that's attending
Yeah,
the summit.
absolutely.
That's is new clients. So if you want to reach out to Dr. Stacy, then of course, you can reach out to her on Instagram, or I'll have
Mhm.
her link to her website as well, so you can reach out to her from there. This has been an absolute pleasure. I absolutely have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, and I know that our
Absolutely.
audience has too. I would like to ask you, Dr. Stacy, one last thing before we close up the
Sure.
show for today. So, what is one inspirational thing you would say to a woman experiencing fertility challenges with PCOS?
I always like to leave on a note of positivity. And truly, it really is. If I can heal, literally anybody can heal. Like you have it within you to be a completely different person. And,
Mm.
truly just taking the leap and trusting your gut. And if you don't know what that intuition is, do the mindset work so that you can
You
trust
can
your
hear it.
gut and go there. Yeah, and
Yes.
everyone can truly get to a better place with their health.
Your body is a magical, if there's anything I have learned, your body is a magical, wonderful being. I like to call her a her, like when I refer to my body,
Yeah.
because it's like we're teammates, she's like my soulmate.
Yeah,
She's her and I are doing this thing
totally.
together through this world, and so
Totally.
getting to know her and getting to support her is one of the best things that I can do for myself. And so realizing that that's and sharing that note of positivity that you can have a better health and you don't have to suffer, that there are things that you
Mhm.
can do really is empowering, and I really appreciate that message. So thank you
Of
so much,
course.
Dr. Stacy. It has
Yeah,
been a
thank
pleasure,
you.
and I look forward to speaking more soon.
All right, take care.